another episode of Zone Coverage. I'm Cody Schoeler here with Ryan Root, as always, coming back to you after a bit of a hiatus. I know we've been gone. We've had some technical issues here on the Dash Sports side of things, but we are back. We are with you, and we are ready to talk about some NFL. We're ready to talk about Week 10, which I think for me, it kind of Week 9, which unfortunately we weren't able to talk about, was insane and was really weird. And I think Week 10 kind of corrected a lot of that. So it's kind of good to talk about that in tandem. So we can just get straight on into our takeaways from Week 10. I know they might be connected to last week, but that's okay. So if you want to start, or if I want to start, I'll leave it up to you. You can go ahead.
Well, you were saying that this week kind of corrected last week's craziness. I would argue this week was just as weird when it came to some games. Because
it's definitely weird, but like I think we'll get like a lot of teams lost last week. That was like, what the heck? And so I think some of them corrected it, while some messed up this week too. But yeah, it's been a crazy few weeks for sure.
Right, because correct me if I'm wrong, but the last time we had a show, Cam Newton wasn't on the team. Mm-hmm. Adrian Peterson hadn't played yet. Mike White was looking amazing with a 400-yard game.
We discussed the possibility, that Adrian Peterson would sign. But, he hadn't signed it. He hadn't played.
So it's just been a while.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, I mean, this week kind of shocked me, kind of, had me scratch my head at times. But, there were definitely some things that, were bound to work out this week as opposed to last week where we had, the Bills losing to the Jags, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, there's kind of a lot to talk about. I'll go through my first takeaway from the weekend. I guess this will kind of be a takeaway from Week 9 and 10 because it's been a little bit. But so I think my number one takeaway from the weekend is I'm not sure who the best team in the AFC is right now, because although I think a lot of people would say the Ravens at some point, Ravens get embarrassed by Miami and they lose on Thursday Night Football. And, some people would say the Titans, let's say, because they're kind of, on the up and coming.
The Titans are ahead by, 1.5 games, but they have 8 wins and the next teams have 6. So.
Right. They're the overall number 1 seed right now. Yeah. So, but are they the best team in the AFC is, kind of the thing that I have to ask myself, because, without Derrick Henry, is this team really a Super Bowl caliber team?
I think the last
and no Julio Jones either, it seems.
I think the last time we did this, the Bengals were the number 1 team in the AFC.
That's true. The Bengals, they're completely out of the playoff picture now that I'm looking at it, and Pittsburgh is, and New England is as well. So is New England the best team in the AFC? Some people would say the Chargers at the beginning of the season. That definitely doesn't look like the case. I would probably make the case for Buffalo at some point. I can't put my faith in Buffalo to be the best team in the AFC either. The AFC is really just a game of musical chairs right now. Every team is like spokes on a wheel.
Yeah. Are we right back where we started, and are the Chiefs the best team? Like,
right, because they're leading the division right now. So much has kind of flip-flopped.
If they continue to play like they did last night, then they probably are the best team. I still think I'd probably go with the Ravens. I know I've been kind of hot on the Ravens this whole time. I just think that, they have played good in big games, and they've certainly added to their offense. Lamar Jackson is looking really good. The defense has its pieces, but and Tennessee, I think, is, we do need to take them seriously because, they don't have Derrick Henry, but, we've seen I don't want to talk crap against running backs, but we've seen running back is probably one of the easier positions to replace production-wise. You're not going to replace Derrick Henry's production, but you can slide in Adrian Peterson and Jeremy McNichols and still have an above-average run game because it's there's the line and everything up to that, and their defense is pretty solid. But this is going to be something that plays itself out, over the next couple of weeks. And unlike the NFC, where you have 5 teams at the top that are locks for the playoffs, and then a bunch of teams that don't really deserve it trying to fight for those last couple spots. You've got probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I mean, the Browns right now, I'm looking on
Totally forgot
ESPN's
about the
list.
Browns. Yeah.
They're 11th. The Browns are 11th. So it's like any of those 11 teams could make the playoffs. And even though the Broncos, they're 5-5 as well, although I don't really believe in that. So, it's like you got a lot of teams kind of fighting for those spots. And I want to get into one of mine that kind of piggybacks off that. I know you mentioned them, but the Pats, and they're ready to compete. I still don't put them in the same caliber as the top tier AFC teams yet, the ones that can actually probably contend for a Super Bowl and can contend against the top 5 NFC teams, or at least the top of those NFC teams. But I mean, it's not out of the question right now that they can, win that division. They've still got 2 more games against Buffalo, and if they win both of those, then they could be in the driver's seat in that division. I still think Buffalo's a better team, but the Patriots are playing really good right now. Their offense is doing everything it needs to do. The defense, once again, is a Bill Belichick defense that's doing, making plays, shutting stuff down they need to. And, the thing about them is now they're racking up good wins, because there was for a while, all their wins were against the Jets and some other the Texans or whatever. But, they didn't beat the Cowboys, but they beat the Chargers. They beat the Browns now. So it's like now they're beating. That's how you climb the rankings, is you beat the teams ahead of you. And they've, so they're doing that. They're doing what they need to do. And, I think in terms of those wild card spots, I mean, you got to think at least they're going to get one of the wild card spots, especially when you throw in the fact that, the whole AFC North is competing, and almost the whole AFC West is competing, but they're going to beat each other up. Whereas, the Patriots, they've got one more game against the Dolphins, and like the Bills have those games, so they're going to, rack up some more wins. So I just think, the Pats are ready to kind of compete, and they're ready to stake their claim to, making the playoffs and possibly even pushing for the division, in which a division that we thought was probably the most locked out of any of them is now becoming a little up in the air.
So I was looking at the Patriots schedule right here on the side, and I see 4 games that could easily be won by New England to finish out the season. That's Atlanta, Indianapolis, Jacksonville, and Miami. I could see those being pretty easy New England wins, considering that they've won 5 of their last 6 games. And the game that they lost to Dallas, they only lost by 6, and they scored 29 points. So, I think this Patriots team has obviously shocked a lot of people. And Mac Jones, I think, is continuing to, push the ceiling that's been placed on him by fans. He's doing exactly what Belichick is saying. And I think if this Patriots team makes the playoffs, or let alone, win the division, let's say, but if this team makes the playoffs, then I have to look at Bill Belichick and, 2 years removed of Tom Brady, and he's already back in the playoffs. If someone's not going to call him the greatest football coach of all time, I don't know who else you could call. He moved off of his quarterback for 2 decades. Had a year where they went like 6-10 or 7-9 last year, right? They didn't play awful per se.
Yeah, I mean, they had the 15th pick, so they're middle of the pack.
Right. And then they go right back into this season with a rookie quarterback, basically still no weapons to pass to on offense. It's still a very run-heavy offense for the most part, and a very, just kind of boring passing offense. But it's the defense. It's Belichick's coaching on the defensive side. And like I had said it a couple shows ago, when it comes down to personnel, like matching up perfectly, and you're playing against New England's going to win 9 times out of 10 because you got Belichick out there. And, it's shocking, but it's also not to see the Patriots in this picture, because I think some people had these guys as their dark horse before the season started. But just the way they've been turning it up in this second quarter of the season has been something to watch. And I just realized it's my takeaway now. Forgot that you went. So
I hitched mine to yours, so that's why it's a little bit confusing, because I went right off yours. So Go for it.
So, kind of on the flip side, Washington had a upset victory over the Buccaneers that I don't think many people were suspecting.
Oh, God, no.
But really what impressed me, and I saw, I can't claim this to be my own idea because I saw this on a TikTok video yesterday, but the last drive that the Washington football team had was fantastic.
10 minutes, as longest drive in the NFL.
Was it?
This year.
It definitely feels like it.
Like 10 and a half minutes.
Yeah, they start the drive with 10 minutes left in the game. They end the drive with 29 seconds?
29
and up by multiple possessions. So
up by 10, yeah.
They really just, went piece by piece up that field and just kept taking, the gimme yards and just kept getting first down over first down, converting on third down. And I give this team a lot of credit. I give Ron Rivera credit as well as Taylor Heineke. That being said, I think Washington showed kind of what their potential is moving forward. We all thought Washington and the Cowboys were going to compete for this NFC East division, and Washington has definitely not met up to expectations, and the Cowboys are just killing it right now. But Washington takes down the Super Bowl champs in the way that they did in just a patient final drive. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah.
But I think Taylor Heineke is the long-term option. Get him signed for I'd say 2-3 year deal. Have him be the option moving forward until there's some big quarterback prospect or free agent, whatever you want. Stick with Heineke for right now. Obviously, Chase Young going out with the ACL tear is devastating for this defense. But Terry McLaurin, Antoine Gibson, or Antonio Gibson. They all just showed their potential in this game. And I think, next year they could be that Washington football team that we suspected them to be based off of this win alone. They haven't been meeting expectations, but I think they showed a lot of heart.
I mean, the NFC is at a point where any team other than the Lions can get hot down the stretch of the season and probably sneak into the playoffs. I mean, Carolina has a 7 seed right now at 5-5, and the Bears are 15th at 3-6, and that's where Seattle, New York Giants, and Washington, and then maybe San Francisco after tonight, all at 3-6. So, I mean, all it takes is you get to 9 wins, you're probably locked for the playoffs in the NFC. So, maybe Washington figures it out, beats the team that we thought they could be. But to me, this said a lot more about the Buccaneers. That's why one of my takeaways was that they just are not the team to beat. I believe last time we last time we did a recap or whatever, you were really strong about the fact that you thought the Buccaneers were the best team in the NFL.
I think that was, I want to say 3 or maybe 4 weeks ago. Yeah.
And while, sure, by the time the playoffs come, they could be in that position again, obviously. But watching that game, there was just a lot of issues I had with the Buccaneers because on paper, this should have been a huge blowout. I mean, Washington having one of, if not the worst defenses in the league, the Buccaneers having a prolific offense that couldn't do anything, and it was self-inflicted mistakes. Washington wasn't really shutting them down and doing anything crazy. It was, mistakes. It was drops. It was like just bad plays. And then on defense, the Buccaneers defense, wasn't supposed to be. We knew they weren't great anymore because they had, lost a lot and just underperforming. But the Washington offense was not very good. So this should have been a game that the Buccaneers won very easily. And to go out and struggle like that after the bye, and 2 weeks ago you lost to the Saints and Trevor Siemian, it is, it's not a good look for them. So I am concerned about them. I think, as much as, I believe in Brady and all these guys that won the Super Bowl last year, when it comes down to the playoffs, I think there are much more complete teams in the league, and especially in the NFC. So I'm starting to get a little worried about them. Like I said, doesn't mean they can't figure it out, but I think some of the issues that we're like, oh yeah, they've got holes, but they're still the Bucs. They're starting to become a little bit bigger and a little more concerning.
Yeah, it's once Tom Brady's going to get in the playoffs, the rest will be history. They are going to make the playoffs, whether we like it or not. Nobody in the NFC South is going to be competing with them.
Well, the Saints are a game behind them, and they have the tiebreaker. So if the Saints
don't have a quarterback right now,
if the Saints would have beat the Titans, the Saints would be in first place in the NFC South right now. So it is a lot closer.
And the Saints are Tom Brady's kryptonite since coming to Tampa Bay. But so they do play again, I believe.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like I think they'll make the playoffs for sure. But like the Saints, if the Buccaneers stumble, they've got a game against the Bills. I know they've got a pretty easy schedule, but if they drop a few more games, especially with that game against the Saints, wherever it is, they could make it a lot more difficult. This is a team that was supposed to be, almost a shoo-in for the number 1 seed in the bye because of how easy their schedule was supposed to be, and now they were the wild card team last year when they won it, but I think if this team is a wild card team this year, that's a huge difference.
Yeah. Was it your takeaway or mine next? I can't remember.
Yours.
It's been a while. I'm sorry. We have a lot to cover.
I blended mine into yours again, so I'm just
gotcha. Odell Beckham wasn't on the Rams the last time we did a show. A lot has changed.
Browns.
But yeah, so let's talk about this Panthers team, because I know that they are not the premier team that I was hoping that they would be, but they're 5-5. And I don't think anybody was expecting them to be 5-5. I think once they reached 3-0, people were expecting them to be 3-7 at this point, right? They weren't really expecting any wins. But the reason that I'm interested in the Panthers now, so obviously they took down Arizona yesterday. No Kyler Murray has a huge part of that. So the win doesn't mean a whole lot. But in terms of Carolina's offense, they're not moving forward with Sam Darnold, right? He's benched for the time being.
He's injured.
He's injured. I was thinking of somebody else. Zach Wilson's hurt too. Anyways, Sam Darnold's not playing. And that left, what was it, PJ Walker? PJ Walker at quarterback. But they end up getting Cam Newton a couple days before the game. And I find it fascinating what they're doing with Cam Newton being this, red zone goal line type quarterback. Yeah. First two times he touched the ball, I believe was a score. I believe it was a touchdown.
Yeah.
I think this is just a theory, if you will. This is just kind of a huge prediction. Cam Newton, I think, may be slowly building himself, back into the Carolina, community, if you will. These few little plays that he had on the goal line to score, you could tell that he's a lot happier out there playing. He's back in Carolina. He's back wearing, the blue and white. But I think he's going to slowly get himself back into this offense. I'm sure the entire Panthers organization know Sam Darnold is not going to be the long-term option. Didn't work out. We took a chance. We'll move on. They got Cam Newton to help PJ Walker with the offense or something like that is what I read. They got him for his coaching ability or his mentorship. I don't really believe that in the long term. In the short term, sure. He's going to come in and he's going to contribute to the team and try to get this team some wins. But long term, Cam Newton may be starting next year for all I know. Yeah. I think Cam Newton is working his way back into a starting role in the NFL. It didn't work out with New England. I know, Cam Newton is not rid of any drama or anything these past couple of years, right? But he's back at home as far as I'm concerned. He had 2 touchdowns. Yes, he threw the ball less than 10 times or whatever, right?
4 times. 3 for 4 for 8 yards.
And he's basically a running back with an arm, right? More so than Lamar Jackson. I would argue that he has less an arm than Lamar Jackson at this point.
Well, yeah, Lamar Jackson's a good quarterback. Cam Newton's Taysom Hill with an MVP award right now. That's what he is. That's what he's going to be.
Taysom Hill with an MVP
the rest
award.
Of the year. You're not running Cam Newton
for the rest of the year. Sure, I'm not saying
PJ Walker threw the ball 29 times. You're not doing that with Cam Newton. And and the thing with the Panthers is they screwed themselves because they're on the hook for $19 million fully guaranteed for Sam Darnold next year. He almost has to be their starting quarterback. I mean, I think this shows just getting rid of Sam Darnold made this team better. And it's just, I think PJ Walker's better. I think even who knows what Cam Newton is up to and capable of is better. And so I think, is Cam Newton going to stick around for $5 million again while the Panthers are paying Sam Darnold $19 million? I don't know. Who knows? Because there are some teams that are going to be looking for starting quarterbacks, and maybe they could try to give Cam Newton a shot. But yeah, I don't know. But I mean, I think he'll be fine in that role. I think it's a good role for him at this point. I don't think his arm can hold up throwing the ball as many times as you need to throw the ball over a season like that. I think they found a perfect role for him. Maybe make some spot starts if the guy's banged up or something. But, so hopefully he sticks around Carolina for around the same price, and they're willing to do that, because I think, that will help out, especially if they, decide to go with Sam Darnold again. I don't know what they're doing with that, but like I said, they picked up his 5th-year option before the season, so they are stuck with him for at least one more year. Doesn't mean they have to start him, but does mean they have to pay him. So they're in an interesting spot. But yeah, I mean, he certainly gave them a jolt of energy just from a personality standpoint. But I don't know if he, changes much about this team at this point.
It's either that he plays for this team, or I can suspect him, hitting up Ron Rivera in free agency this offseason. And seeing if
I think that was kicked around at some point. We'll see. I mean, he proved that he's worthy of being on a roster somewhere. I don't know if he is a starter, but we'll certainly see.
I would start. I've said a lot of things about the Saints offense being probably the weirdest offense in the league. Just this gadget play, Alvin Kamara, Taysom Hill, Jameis Winston, weird offense. I'd put Cam Newton in there over Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston doesn't get yards. He just gets touchdowns. And people may think, well, that's what you want at the end of the day. Yeah, sure. If you're throwing 10-yard touchdowns and all of your skill players are doing all the work for you and your defense is getting you turnovers, and Jameis Winston can throw the ball in the red zone. How about that? You can't count on Jameis Winston to get 300 yards in this offense.
Well, we've talked about this. He can get 300 yards, but it'll come with 3 interceptions. So the Saints were trying not to get the interception.
You could put Cam Newton in his position, and
Cam Newton can't be a better result for yards. So Cam Newton can't really throw. He was
and neither can Jameis right now in this last year. So it would work fine. You're just needing a quarterback that can take the snaps, run the offense, do what he needs to do. Plus, Cam Newton's mobility next to Jameis Winston is not even comparable. They practically did the same thing with Taysom Hill last year when they had him start at quarterback, where he didn't throw it a whole lot, but he ran. So I'm just saying Cam Newton to New Orleans doesn't sound like an awful idea. It's probably one of his better options if he wants to go to a new team. But I think as far as right now, Cam in Carolina, I love what I'm seeing. It seems like he's happy.
Yeah.
I'm just curious to see if it progresses into more.
Yeah, and I think the Carolina Panthers screwed themselves because they're stuck with Sam Darnold, and I think he sucks. But
I'm fully off the Sam Darnold train. Trust me. Yeah. I hear you.
I've been telling you that the train tracks were heading straight for a cliff for weeks, and you didn't listen to me until it was too late. I was never a Sam Darnold.
I thought Darnold deserved a fair shot in the NFL and not play with a dumpster fire team, but then he plays with a team that's not exactly a dumpster fire, but they have arguably the best running back in the league, so they can't be that bad. But they kind of are when he's
turns out Sam Darnold was perfect for the Jets because they're the same. I want to talk about another team or another thing that we disagreed on, and that's Green Bay. You were never very high on Green Bay, and now Green Bay is top of the AFC. And NFC. They would also be top of the AFC. That's why they had the AFC standings at first. Top of the NFC. Maybe they're top of the NFL. I'm not sure what the tiebreaker with them and the Titans would be. And really the past couple games, it's been on the strength of their defense. And they would not have lost last week to the Chiefs if they had Aaron Rodgers. Now, I know it's Aaron Rodgers' fault for being pretty much an idiot and all that stuff going on. But, their defense held Kansas City to 13 points. Rodgers would score, or 14 or whatever it was. Rodgers would score more than that. Jordan Love was not ready. But the defense has really good. I mean, we saw that yesterday. I mean, the defense is elite at this point. I haven't looked at necessarily all the numbers, but in terms of the way they're playing, I would put them up there with, right below some of the like elite defenses like a Buffalo or, some of these other ones, maybe the Rams, but even their defense, like they might have one of the best defenses in the NFL.
I'll add to your defensives, one of the best defenses in the league. They are third in the league in points allowed. They are 10th in sacks, and they are 5th in interceptions.
Yeah,
so,
and they're
third in time of possession. So they make you give it up, and they will keep the ball basically.
Yeah, the third in points allowed, that's huge, and they've been doing it. Yeah, they've been doing it. And I talked about the first time I made this point. If you take away that Saints game in week 1, which clearly this Packers team was just not the team that they are,
even up on the wrong side of the bed.
5 weeks later, then their numbers are even better because that's like the only one that they've really allowed a bunch of points. But they've been doing this recently without their best corner and probably best player, Jair Alexander, as well as their best pass rushers, Darius Smith. And they're still putting things together. They're still doing pretty well. Obviously, they just shut out the Seahawks, and it's probably more Seahawks than Packers. But no matter how bad the Seahawks play, it's hard to keep them off the board entirely. Obviously, the bad holding call at the end of the first half made them not be able to kick a field goal. But we don't have to talk about that. But I just think, I was saying this was before the Cardinals game. I was saying that the Green Bay deserves to be up there. They then beat the Cardinals, and they've been looking really good. They're top of the NFC, and I think, and it's not just because they've got Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. It's because of the defense. And so, like I said, I thought this was a better version of Kansas City because the defense was actually good. And so we'll see what they do. But I think, that defense is able to stand up there with the best of the best and hold their ground.
So the defense being elite, for sure. One of the best defenses in the league this season. Yesterday, I mean, they shut out Seattle. The defense is that good. Well, the defense, at least knows their plays. They shut out Seattle.
Who knows how many other defenses would have shut out Seattle yesterday? Obviously, we'll never know, but Green Bay did shut out Seattle, so that's something.
So Green Bay shut out Seattle. Going into the fourth, they had 3 points against one of the worst defenses in the league.
Hey, they were playing good.
I don't care if you have 500 yards passing and you have 3 points on the board.
Yeah.
Like, something's not working. The reason, I think we could all say that the Bills played awful last week against the Jaguars. 9-6, terrible score to look at. There's no reason that the Bills should not have gotten a touchdown against a Jaguars defense. There's no reason. Just like there's absolutely no reason that this shouldn't have been like a 30-point game with the way that their defense was shutting Seattle down. I agree with you in saying, Seattle just went out there and looked like they were running a practice as opposed to playing a, Sunday football game.
America's game of the week.
Yeah, and the fact that Aaron Rodgers is going into the fourth quarter with 3 points and they finished out the game with 17 barely in their last possession. It's like, are they the best team in the NFC North? No doubt. Are they the best team in the NFC? If I really broke it all down, like, probably not. I would probably pick the Rams. Or
who could? Yeah, those are the only two teams you can put ahead of them right now. But
and if the Cardinals stay healthy, I would still pick the Cardinals over the Packers because, and I don't care that the Packers beat them because, like I said, the Cardinals lost. The Packers did not win. It was they won off of a mishap from AJ Green. So no, I still am not putting the Packers over the Cardinals. The Cardinals were going to win that game if AJ Green wasn't, had his, disconnected controller kind of, Madden player-esque play, right? It's like, I'm not going to put the Packers over the Cardinals. I know that sounds stupid because they beat them, but Packers, they deserve to be the number one overall seed just for how good they've played in the rest of their games. Don't get me wrong. I still wouldn't put Aaron Rodgers in the top 5 MVP candidates, but we could talk about that later.
Yeah, we will. What I like to do with these top teams and how I like to judge them a lot is like how do you play at your worst? Because obviously we're teams when they play at their best. I mean, Kansas City's probably the best team in the NFL when they play at their best. Them or maybe Tampa Bay or whatever. But that's not what it is because you don't always play at your best. So I like to see if teams can win when they're bad. It was one of the reasons that I liked the Cardinals a little bit earlier because I watched them win bad games. So that's the reason why the same reason why you are saying that they're not good is the reason I am saying they are good is because when the offense does struggle, which happens, it has happened for all these other teams, they can still win. When Tampa Bay's offense struggles, they lose. Even when the Rams offense struggled last week, they lost, and so the thing that I like about Green Bay is when their offense does struggle, and it's gonna happen. Rodgers had, he's been doing yoga for the past 2 weeks. Who even knows what he's been doing? Wasn't able to come back until Saturday, and they were able to win because they can make up for mistakes when they happen. So that's one of the reasons. Obviously, against some of these other teams, probably don't win, but I like the fact that they can win ugly, and I think that is huge, especially if we're playing playoff games in Lambeau Field in January. You might need to win ugly.
Yeah, and that's what surprised me even more is that they're playing in their home stadium in the snow. I'm like, this is it. Like, you guys, this is your territory here. You should be at home here, but we'll just see how it goes moving forward. But you mentioned the Chiefs a little bit for my last takeaway. Chiefs obviously, stomped the Raiders. Patrick Mahomes with 5 passing touchdowns, 400 passing yards. The Raiders didn't play particularly bad. It's just the Chiefs just, centered in on their old selves. Like Patrick Mahomes, after the coin flip happened at the beginning of the game, he's just like, okay, I'm gonna play. I'm gonna play my game. Like, I'm gonna forget everything that's happened. I'm just gonna play. Like that's. I think that's honestly what happened because it didn't seem like they had any jitters at all. This looked like the Chiefs team that we've seen the past 3 years. Mm-hmm. Like this looks like the team that we were expecting week 1, week 2, right?
Yeah.
So that being said, are the Chiefs back or are they not? You know what I mean? It's like they are currently winning the AFC West. Mm-hmm. I've said it before of why I think, the AFC West is arguably the most competitive division in football right now, other than maybe the AFC North. But there just doesn't want to be a winner in this division right now. It's like Kansas City being number 1 in the division. If you would have said that 3 weeks ago, people would be like, no, they're playing terrible. What are you talking about? The Raiders are going to be up there.
I would have still believed it. The talent, I think the talent could win out.
Sure.
But yeah, they were at a crossroads where it was like this could get really bad or this could, just be a blip at the start of the season.
I would argue that each of these teams in this division would, they would trade games against each other. Every single team in this division, when they play each other twice, would go 1-1. Like just on paper, I think. That won't happen, but just looking at these teams on paper, I would say that they would each trade games. Like you are going to get 3 guaranteed losses from division opponents, and 3 guaranteed wins, basically. So the Chiefs at 6-4, I don't know if they're necessarily back. I mean, if I'm looking at their schedule here, they got Dallas this next week. That's going to be that's going to be a real telling game for the Chiefs.
Yeah, for sure.
Can you compete with the Cowboys? They got Denver, Raiders, Chargers for 3 straight weeks, AFC West matchups. And then they have the Steelers and Cincinnati. So it's like, Cincinnati may not be the same team come week 18, but, Pittsburgh is still kind of scratching and clawing in their division. Literally their last 5 games of the year are all, I would say, competitive teams because guess what? They're AFC West and they're AFC North teams.
Yeah. But I mean, the Chiefs could win 5 of those. Like they could.
Right. In their last 6 games, I think they could win minimum 3. And minimum 3 gets them to 9-8, right?
Yeah.
which I don't know if that puts them in the playoffs, is what I'm saying, because of the division.
I mean,
so
I think
it's going to be close. Is what I'm saying.
I still think they'll win this division. I mean, yeah, they're 6-4, but they're they have played probably the toughest schedule up to this point, or at least at the start of the year. Their losses are to Baltimore, Tennessee, Buffalo, and I forget the other one. I can't remember if it was a bad loss.
Right, they haven't lost against the Jaguars. They haven't lost against the Jets.
When they've played those teams, they've looked good, and so that's the thing that, I think we were reacting appropriately because their defense looked terrible, and it was. But they're losing to teams that the Chargers. That's the Chargers. They probably lost to 4 teams that are all going to make the playoffs, and those could possibly be the 4 division winners in the AFC. If the Chargers could win the AFC West. So yeah, but all of their losses are bad. Had some technical difficulties going on there, unfortunately, but we're going to keep it rolling until Ryan can hop back in. Just like I said, the Chiefs, they're still a good team. They've lost good teams, lost to really good teams. They could bring it back around. But I'm going to move on to my last one. It has to do with a team that was mentioned as well, and that is the fact that the Dallas Cowboys lost last week was a fluke. It still wasn't good. It's never good to lose get dominated by a team like Denver, who might not end up making the playoffs, but they bounced back probably as good as any team did in this. Absolutely thrashed the Falcons. I mean, 30-something points in the first half. They looked like the makings of a team that could really do damage in the NFC in a week where, the Buccaneers looked rough and the Cardinals looked rough and the Rams lost last week as well. The Cowboys are coming together and, showing that they have the potential to be, maybe the top team in the NFC. They playing in that division, they certainly have the means to get that number 1 seed and to get that bye, and that would be absolutely huge for them if they're able to do that. But just, the Cowboys, back to what they were. That game against the Broncos could have been one of those moments where they went from, it could have showed cracks in the armor that other teams exploit, like we've seen with the Chiefs and some of these other top teams over the past couple of years. When you see how to beat a team like that, and then everybody just continues to do that. The Falcons couldn't do that. That doesn't mean much because the Falcons aren't necessarily this great team, although they were in playoff position when the week started. But I am sold on the Cowboys, obviously, and I think when you pop back from a game like that was so brutal to go back and win, then I think that there's a possibility that this could be something even bigger, and that they have the potential to really turn it around. It's good to bounce back from a loss like that. So Ryan is dealing with some technical difficulties. Texting me that his internet just crapped out, so not able to change the slides, but I'm going to move on without him. We're going to talk about some Defensive Player of the Year candidates this year. We talk about MVP a lot, which we will do toward the end of this as well. But I want to give some love to the defensive players, most of which we talk about from time to time. And, me and Ryan have the same top 3, which I can't imagine a lot of other people would have differently. I think it's been playing out pretty, making a lot of sense the way it's playing out both have Myles Garrett first, who is a guy we've talked about a bit. But, he's played 10 games. He has 13 sacks, which is leading the league. So that's good. Oh, here you go. I moved on to Defensive Player of the Year just then. So I was talking about Myles Garrett. I said so we hadn't gone on too far. I mentioned we both have the same top three. So, that's I think a lot of people would also agree with that. But yeah, Myles Garrett, 13 sacks, leading the NFL. I believe he is. He's also tied for tackles for loss type of the league, and he's number one in quarterback hits and pressures, and just he's the best pass rusher. Pass rusher is the most important position. Pretty simple. Oh God,
bless you.
Thank you. But yeah, I was just let me do the math and see what he's on pace for, because I know we checked. I did the little check-in a few weeks ago. He's not on pace to break the record. He's on pace for 22 and a half, so record. But, all it takes is a big game here or there. And, we see guys threaten that record, get 20-plus sacks, and they almost always get Defensive Player of the Year. And I think as long as he keeps it up, he's got a good a chance as any. He's definitely the leader in that regards.
Yeah, so the thing that, I think all the storylines want to point towards Trayvon Diggs in terms of Defensive Player of the Year, because just having that many interceptions to this point, I mean, getting double-digit interceptions is already a fantastic season, and he's most likely going to well exceed that. I think it's not a guarantee you're going to get an interception every game, but it's kind of tough to predict. But
just got his 8th yesterday after a few weeks of not getting one. So he's falling off a bit.
Terrible. Anytime he doesn't get an interception, he's just awful. Come on, Trayvon, you got to get more.
Mm-hmm.
I think all those storylines want to point to Trayvon getting Defensive Player of the Year, but Myles Garrett, there's no reason for anybody to overtake him other than possibly T.J. Watt if he exceeds him in sacks, because T.J. Watt has more tackles, and if he gets more sacks than Myles Garrett, and pair that with probably having a better record than the Browns, I could see T.J. Watt maybe being, a late contender. But for the past couple of weeks, it's still been Myles Garrett. What interested me about both of our lists was that we both have at least one Titans player on there, which I find fascinating because, Kevin Byard's been having a great year as well. You have him in 4th place, and we both have Harold Landry the 3rd and 5th place. The fact that we have at least one Titans player on our list, and you have 2 Titans players for Defensive Player of the Year, just goes to show, nobody would look at the Titans defense right now, I would say right now, and just be like, oh yeah, that's like a premier defense. That's like one of the best defenses in the league. But there's 2 players from that defense that could very well be Defensive Player of the Year. I think that just shows just the star power, I guess, that the Titans have, because on offense, obviously, Derrick Henry, Julio Jones, Ryan Tannehill, A.J. Brown, we get it, right? But on defense, you still got some great playmakers out there. And I think that's what's propelling Tennessee to be one of these premier AFC teams, is just how well that their stars are performing. So, I hope Harold Landry can, continue the season that he's having and, maybe get into that 14, 15 sack category or something like that. But, and then in 4th place, I don't know if you said it, I have Aaron Donald there, but
I mean, I think, Aaron Donald always, you can put up there.
Right.
Yeah, that. I just, looked at stats. I really want to put Darius Leonard on there. So he could probably be in the running for my 5th spot there. I think he's just such a dynamic player, that linebacker position. But, I wanted to throw Jalen Ramsey up there. Corner's always a hard one, and I think that's the thing with Trayvon Diggs is, sure, he's having the best season. He has the most interceptions, but Jalen Ramsey's still the best corner in the NFL. But the stats are just going to be weird because people don't throw at him. But, so I think he's certainly deserving of it. But Kevin Byard, I think, is having a very sneaky good season. If it wasn't for, Trayvon Diggs going off with 8 interceptions, Byard would be tied for the lead right now with 5. One of those being a pick 6. He also has a fumble return for a touchdown, and he's chipping in 46 tackles as a deep safety. He's top of the league in passes defensed as well. I mean, it's just he's playing really well on a really good Titans defense, and so I think it's definitely a guy that can be a bit underrated. But yeah, I mean, it's Myles Garrett's to lose at this point. You lead the league in sacks, pretty good chance that you're going to be the defensive player of the year. I don't know how the Browns, not making the playoffs, if that is to be the case, will affect that. Obviously, a lot of preseason Myles Garrett expectations were on the back of the Browns kind of having this rejuvenated defense and, added a lot of pieces there. If the Browns defense is really good and Myles Garrett's the best guy on that, then that's kind of his pathway. So don't know how that will affect it. But, in terms of the best teams, I mean, you've got guys for Tennessee and, throw in Donald and Ramsey for the Rams, but the top teams, I mean, Trayvon Diggs for the Cowboys, top teams don't have a lot of candidates for that. So interesting to see how it plays out. But yeah, I mean, this is probably out of all the lists we've done, the one that we've closest resembled each other. So I think that was pretty interesting.
I just wanted to say with Trayvon Diggs' case for Defensive Player of the Year, luckily Stephon Gilmore is the most recent corner to win Defensive Player of the Year, as he did so 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. But the most recent corner to win Defensive Player of the Year is Charles Woodson in 2009.
Before that, yeah. And he might have been playing safety at that point, but
it lists him at corner. I know he played both, but the last corner to win Defensive Player before Charles Woodson.
Did Revis not win it?
Darrelle Revis did not win it. No,
interesting.
And it does surprise me every time I see this list of Defensive Player of the Year, Defense Player of the Years, throughout history. And 2015, you don't have Josh Norman on there. I think he had a great case to be Defensive Player of the Year as well at corner. Mm-hmm. But the previous corner to win Defensive Player of the Year, other than Charles Woodson, was in 1994, Mr. Primetime Deion Sanders.
Yeah, so it's tough to win it.
It's corner. A very much like the MVP awards, quarterback heavy award. This is a very defensive end, pass rusher heavy award.
Yeah,
but there's a little more variety in Defensive Player of the Year than there is MVP because I don't think
for sure.
Has there been a receiver that's won it? Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's been quarterbacks, running backs.
Jerry Rice might have
1 year.
Yeah, Jerry Rice might have tied for one, but I don't.
Okay.
I don't think unless you're going way back. Well, you got a few defensive players to win it.
Right, but it's looking at all of these Defensive Player of the Years, all these people are Hall of Famers, every single one of these ones. And it's MVP, any non-quarterback that wins MVP, for the most part, it's a Hall of Famer. You could possibly say Shaun Alexander, but, it's what'd you say?
He's on the periphery. Some people think he deserves it.
I mean, they were 2 fantastic back-to-back seasons that he had.
All I'm saying, he had a better peak than Marshawn Lynch. So if you want to say Marshawn Lynch is a Hall of Famer, then Shaun Alexander is a Hall of Famer.
You could literally argue that because he broke the record at the time, I believe. Or does he still have?
I think LaDainian Tomlinson has one more than him.
Okay.
But I mean,
he had MVP, Hall of Famer right there, right? So it's MVP is a huge award for a defensive player. I can't remember the last defensive player to win MVP.
Lawrence Taylor and Alan Page, the 2 defensive
So Lawrence Taylor, one of the greatest football players ever. So it's defensive MVPs or defensive player of the years, it says a whole lot. And
the guy, Lawrence Taylor,
Diggs to get it, but
throwing this out there, Lawrence Taylor, Bill Belichick, who coached Lawrence Taylor.
Mm-hmm. He's the one who
he threw some praise Myles Garrett's way, saying that he could be LT-esque, the true
Bill
LT.
Belichick is the reason that the Bills didn't win that first Super Bowl that they had of 4 in a row. Mm-hmm. So there's a long hatred for Bill Belichick in Buffalo, just decades.
Well, we can move on to MVP and get into that a little bit. We haven't updated this in a few weeks, but we both are in agreement on the top spot going to Tom Brady despite that loss. Like I mentioned before with his stats, he's not leading the league in yards anymore, but he has his bye, whereas Patrick Mahomes, the guy leading, does not. I think he's leading in yards per game, though. Let me check real quick. Yeah, he's leading in yards per game, and he is leading in touchdowns. So as long as he keeps that up, and the Buccaneers are one of the better teams in the NFL, he's got a pretty good case to win that MVP at 44 years old.
So this might be, I think last year it was safe to say like the only real people that were competing for MVP last year was, Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, and then Aaron Rodgers for the rest of the year, I would say.
Or Josh Allen.
And Josh, yeah.
Russell Wilson stopped after like week 8. Kyler Murray, it was when he got injured. And even that.
Kyler Murray's window was very small.
With the Cardinals not making the playoffs, they weren't really up there. So it was really Rodgers and Allen.
Right. So this year, you could argue there's like 6 guys that are.
I could argue.
If Derrick Henry was healthy, it'd be 7. It's like.
And like I wanted to throw Jonathan Taylor on there. I don't think he'll win it, but if you're the best running back, then I think you deserve some credit.
If you're the best running back, you should be in the top 10, like guaranteed, probably.
And I wish
top 5, but right.
I wish, and that's the thing. Like he's not top 5, but I just wanted to give him some credit, so I'll do it this way. And I wish they did ranked voting like they do for other awards, so you can see. Here's the 13 guys and where they finished.
Right. Like that's what I appreciate about NBA awards.
Yeah.
Is the voting system they have where it's
and
like, this guy had more first play votes, but he got more points. So it's like that leads to controversy in and of itself. But
it's kind of weird. But like I like to see because it's like the whole every year with Russell Wilson, he's never got an MVP vote. Well, he's never been the best player any year, but he's deserved some seconds and thirds and stuff. He should have some top 5 finishes, like NBA or like the Heisman.
Right. It's like, in different sports, it's funny that you bring this up because in different sports, there's, some sports that give out tons of awards to its players, like the NHL. The NHL has so many individual awards, it's not even funny. But that being said, it does mean something when you have one of those awards. They have multiple awards that go to
like the same thing, basically.
Yeah, but some of them are like, sportsmanship awards.
Yeah, like players.
That's something in the NFL. I think the closest thing to a sportsmanship award, would be the Walter Payton Award, but that's really
I think they have like a teammate, or maybe it's NBA. Like they've got some stuff, but they've got 6 basically that are the big ones. 7 if you count Walter Payton, even though that's not voted on the same way, and can't bet on it and guess on it. But yeah, but I wish because that's like. I want to give, Jonathan Taylor and Cooper Kupp like a 5th place spot or whatever, more than that. But it's like with the fact that it's like, all right, you've got like, this guy's getting like last year was like, Aaron Rodgers gets 42 votes, Josh Allen gets 2, nobody else gets votes. But it's like to, boil the season down to that little is pretty crazy. But, I put Patrick Mahomes back on my list.
I'm not ready to do it yet.
I'm ready to do it because he has the most passing yards and he is 2nd in passing touchdowns. And honestly, this is the thing. I don't think he's going to win it. I give him almost a 0 chance to win it unless he breaks.
Unless he just has 6 touchdowns a game for the rest of the year.
If he throws for 50 touchdowns and leads the league, he'll probably get it because. That's been done
50 touchdowns is like that's pretty much the cherry on top.
Yeah. But like so I don't think he'll really win it, but if I'm looking at his stats, like I think he does deserve to be up there. So I think that's kind of
I think he's in the top 10, don't get me wrong.
For sure.
But if he gives me like 2 more Patty Mahomes games, if you will, 2 more 300 plus yard, 3+ touchdown games, then he'd be in the top 5.
I think that's the thing. But
because the team's storyline is following these players when it comes to this award, that's very important because I
was just say like Josh Allen, you have him on yours at what? You have him at 4.
He goes down a spot because of Jacksonville.
Yeah.
And the thing with Josh Allen with me is I don't think he's going to win it either. But
I don't.
And the reason being is because of these last 2 weeks. It's because last week they lose 9-6 to the Jaguars, and you're like, what happened? You should have at least gotten a touchdown. Like you're not Patrick Mahomes going up against the Buccaneers in the Super Bowl and you don't score a touchdown. You're going up against the Jaguars and you scored 6 points in 60 minutes. So there's a game like that, and then there's yesterday, and it's like, oh, the Bills 45-17 victory. Like they are just this Bills team. This offense is so good. It's like, okay, we need to like figure out what this team is, because
he needs to do it against a good team. Like
the good team is not even my concern. It's the consistency.
Yeah,
because they don't lose to good teams anymore. Or like just good teams anymore. They now lose to crap teams. But then the next week, they play arguably a worse team, and they're like, 45 points, easy. Let's go, Bills Mafia. And you're like, okay, but what am I supposed to think with this team? You're not going to be playing the Jets in the playoffs. So it's like you did take down Kansas City, but Kansas City was in a hiatus. You almost beat Tennessee. You took a risk. It didn't work out. So I don't put 100% of my faith in the Bills as of right now. If they just win the rest of the year, then it's like, okay, that's a different story. But that's what's hurting Josh Allen's case in my book. But
and I also want to
top 5, I would say, because he's just the focal point of that offense.
And I get, like, for me, I'm looking at it as like path to winning, because right now he's like 5th, 6th, 7th, around there in like yards and touchdowns. But why should he get it over Tom Brady or over Matthew Stafford, these guys that are ahead of him and their teams are on equal standing? His path to winning MVP was the Bills go 15-2 and he, finishes 5th in yards and 5th. And, like if that happens and your team is clearly the best, that's your path to victory. But that's not happening right now. So it's like, why is he the favorite over these guys that are on pace to, throw for 50 touchdowns and have a team that is just as good? So that's why I'm a little confused. Like, I think the potential's there, but he needs to have those big games, not against the Dolphins and, teams like that, the Jets, and, so that's really interesting. A guy who, let me see where you've got him. You've got him at 3, so I'm okay with that. But Lamar Jackson, I think Lamar Jackson has a really good chance.
He has a chance, but he reminds me of his season right now. Reminds me of I want to say it was either 2017 or 2016 Russell Wilson, or maybe it was 2018, where they didn't make the playoffs, but Russell Wilson did everything for that team.
Well, I think that's the difference, because
the Ravens will make the playoffs. Don't get me wrong,
and I think that's his chance.
Lamar has a higher chance than Russell did during that season. Like Russell, I mean, the stat that I saw with it was like Russell scored every single touchdown for his team except for 2.
Okay, 1 or 2.
I think the one that he didn't score was literally like a 2-yard run to like J.D. McKissick or something.
Yeah, it was.
But Lamar Jackson he's having a better year than Russell that year, just in terms of, he can get it done with his arms and legs. And if the Ravens become like a 13-win team by the end of the season, which means you basically have to win out except for 1, then he is a very strong contender, and they would most like if it's a coin flip between him and Tom Brady, they're going to give it to Lamar, I think, because Tom Brady, it's like, you're the GOAT. You have rings, you have MVPs, you have records. Here's Lamar Jackson. Okay, like he's carrying his team. You have Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, and your best receiver throughout your entire career, Gronk, catching your passes. So I think Lamar Jackson definitely has a chance. As of right now, I put Matt Stafford at 2, just because I would put Matt Stafford at 1 if there was more of a storyline following him that said, this is the Matt Stafford that was supposed to be, that we were supposed to see this past decade. For 10 years, Matt Stafford's talents were, we'll just call it, wasted in Detroit, right? He played fantastic. He played with arguably the best receiver in the league at the time, one of the best receivers ever, if you ask me, Calvin Johnson. But, very few playoff berths, rarely made the Pro Bowl, never was even in the discussion for MVP or maybe even an All-Pro spot. But towards the end of the year, he could very well be guaranteed an All-Pro selection for either first or second team. So he has a chance as well. My fifth guy, which you have as Aaron Rodgers, I have as Dak Prescott, and I'll explain that I think Dak Prescott just has like this explosion potential every single time he touches the field, because Dallas obviously is going to relay to the run when they want to remain safe and run the clock down, and they're going to excel with Zeke and Tony. But Dak Prescott, in a moment's notice, I think could just throw a 350, 400-yard game. Like if I'm thinking about quarterbacks that just have the potential to just ball out of nowhere, I'm not putting like Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers or even Russell Wilson on there. Like we're talking about like your Patrick Mahomes, right? Because we just saw him do it yesterday.
Yeah.
We're talking about your Josh Allens. We're talking about Dak. I think those three guys could absolutely just explode with stats any day of the week. So
Stafford might be.
Stafford maybe he's on the cusp of that. I was thinking that too because he's got a huge arm. But Dak Prescott. I keep saying it. The Cowboys team has to be the most slept on team in this league right now because I would put them in the top 5 in the league. Yeah. But nobody's really talking about them other than Cowboys fans, which we hear every year. But even Cowboys fans have been quiet. Mm-hmm. It's like this Dallas team could make the conference championship, and we may never even see it coming unless you actually pay attention to them. So I have to tip my hat to Dak at least a little.
Yeah, I mean, Dak. Like we talked about, there's 8 guys you probably could throw in your. I mean, neither of us have Kyler Murray. Obviously, injuries have hampered him, but
Justin Herbert's basically out of the question now.
Yeah. But my thing with Aaron Rodgers is honestly, I think the biggest week, the biggest like sticking point for his MVP case was last week when Jordan Love played and the offense looked garbage. Because I think, there's always debates about what is MVP. Is it, the best player on the best team?
Is it the best player or is it literally the most valuable?
Because that's the whole thing.
If it's the most valuable player of the year, then Russell Wilson should have about like 7 of these awards.
That's the thing. And obviously we're biased as Seahawks fans, but like if you want to talk about most valuable player, there was years.
Aaron Rodgers should have multiple too if we're actually saying value to a team. Yes.
Yeah. Like that, and that's what I'm saying. That year where Russell Wilson scored all the touchdowns, that's the definition of value because you were the entire team. And so, like we said with Lamar, if Lamar has that same kind of trajectory and makes the playoffs, I think he's got a good chance. I mean, my guess is the MVP is going to be on one of these number 1 seeds because that is going to be like the tiebreaker. Were you the best team in your conference? It could set you apart. Could set Rodgers apart from Brady or like Lamar apart from Allen or whatever. But, I think if you want to talk about a guy, I mean, we've seen Dak Prescott go down, Cooper Rush comes in and they still win. We've seen backups do a lot of interesting things this year. Mm-hmm. And then we saw Aaron Rodgers not play and the Packers offense looked terrible. Aaron Rodgers was better without his top 3 receivers than his backup was with all of the weapons. I think that says a lot. And at the end of the day,
that's a very powerful statement with his case. It definitely.
And if the Packers are the number 1 seed in the NFC and they're 15-2 or 14-3, he's got a really good chance to win the award. So we'll see how that ends up playing. And then going back to Stafford, the weird part about where we're at right now is so many of these guys are coming off bad performances or, like Allen 2 weeks ago, he righted yesterday. Stafford last week because they play tonight, as we'll get into. It's like, I think with how close it is, it's like, Tom Brady didn't look good, bump him down. But it's like, you have to look at it all the weeks together. But it's like, can I put Stafford number 1 after how he played last week? Can I put, Josh Allen in my top 5 after they lost to the Jaguars, so that, Dak Prescott against the Broncos, like it's just really weird. So obviously you have to look at the season as a whole. And I think Stafford, if he's able to continue what he's doing down the stretch, then I mean, and the narrative's there for him. Look, this was the Rams with Jared Goff. This is the Rams with Stafford. See how much better they are. He is the most valuable player. So there's certainly a lot to watch, but there's obviously a lot of candidates. And it sucks that Derrick Henry isn't a part of it because this would have been the time where he could have legitimately made a case for number 1 when all these quarterbacks and their teams are struggling, because if he's at 1,300 rushing yards right now, I might have him at number and I might have him at number 1. I might have him, if he's got, all these touchdowns. So it really sucks, but we can move on now quickly to the Monday night football preview with the Rams going up against the Niners. Rams looking to get back on track after that loss to the Titans. Let me see. I believe they are 3.5-point favorites. Here we go. Come on. It is in San Francisco. The Rams are favored by 3.5 points. I think this is a get-right game for the Rams. Not the way they wanted to play last week against the Titans. But look at the Rams. Their losses? How many losses do they have? 2 losses.
Cardinals.
They're to the Cardinals and the Titans. Those teams are combined 16 and 4.
Teams that have the potential of being the number 1 overall seed in their conference.
The 2 of the 3 teams that are 8-2. You know, they lose. They've lost to good teams, really good. They've lost to great teams. Niners are not a great team. The Niners are not looking very good, and so I think this is the Rams game to take pretty handily.
I mean, I don't know what I do if I'm the Niners going into this game, because if you have Jimmy G starting this entire game, you're basically, you're chasing nothing. You're chasing a false hope right there. But if you start Trey Lance, it's a huge risk with a potentially great payout to compete with the Rams. So I don't really know what the approach should be for the Niners.
I think you shelf Trey Lance the rest of the season. Maybe give him the last 2 starts, because the worst thing right now, we've seen these guys kind of get burned. You bring in this quarterback before he might be fully ready, because he's young and he's inexperienced, and go, well, we suck, let's give him a shot. And it just tanks his confidence, So I think give him the full offseason next year. He's the guy for the future, but let Jimmy G be the fall guy right now. You're not competing. You don't need to, do anything crazy. You don't need Lance to spark a playoff push. Gradually bring him along, use his packages. Maybe he starts the last 2 games, but, it's all about his development. And that's the number 1 priority for this team right now.
You said let Jimmy G be the fall guy. I think you've been watching too much Succession, Cody. Make him the...
I've been watching not enough Succession. I've been watching not enough Succession because there's not enough Succession out there. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing, You put Trey Lance out there, and look what's happening to Justin Fields. Is this helping Justin Fields? It might not be hurting him, but is it helping him right now? Is he getting better because he's going out there and just getting his ass kicked every week because the Bears are garbage? No, and he might be fine. He might be fine in the end, but it's why you. It's
destroying his potential. I hear you. Yeah.
It's not helping for sure, and it's why you have. It's why you have players literally like Tyrod Taylor, who was supposed to do that for Baker and for Herbert until they got thrust into the spotlight, and it worked. And if Lance came in those games that he started and was awesome, then he'd keep going. But if he's struggling, there's no need to keep throwing him out there. So, yeah, I mean, let Jimmy G keep doing his thing. The Niners look, competent at some points. They're getting some offensive weapons back. Because I can't remember who they beat last week. It wasn't they won, but it was I don't think it was the Bears, but it was not a great.
It was the Bears. They won on Halloween against the Bears.
Yeah, so it wasn't.
We were hoping was going to be Trey Lance and Justin Fields.
It wasn't great, but they can compete. But yeah, this is Rams all the way.
It's Rams all the way. So I mean, I want to ask you going to the night. I mean, do you think Jimmy G is going to be the next bridge quarterback of the league then, if he's out of San Fran by the end of the year?
I mean, I don't think he's a, Ryan Fitzpatrick or a Tyrod Taylor, no. But he's a guy you bring in if you're Detroit and you go, and then you end up. That
says a lot about Jared Goff if they're going to bring Jimmy G into the replacement.
Or he's a guy you bring in, and then if you end up with this rookie quarterback, then he got it. But you don't bring him in hoping to be a bridge quarterback, because I think he's good enough to be solid. But I don't know. Maybe
it's almost like
whatever.
It's almost like when the Seahawks signed Matt Flynn, and they're like, let's see if
they weren't expecting it.
It might work.
Yeah, you mean Matt Flynn? Matt Flynn. Yeah. You mean what Mike White's going to be? Mike White, the new Matt Flynn, except now all the heirs out of that balloon. He's deflated. So give me your pick. Is it are you going Rams? Will they win by 3.5 points?
I would take Rams to cover easy, and I'm I think they win. I don't think there's going to be like a blowout or anything.
Mm-hmm.
It could very well be, but something tells me the Rams are just going to play their game. They're literally just going to go out there and just follow everything to a T. There's going to be great, deep passes to Cooper Kupp. A lot of people are going to be looking at Odell tonight. I wouldn't even be looking at Odell because people are going to.
Are you a Ben Skoranek guy?
No, I think Odell has potential to be like a good weapon to this team. But if all the people are going to look at is Odell, then I mean, drama follows Odell Beckham. I'm not an Odell Beckham fan by any regards, but if all people are going to look at is Odell and be like, he only had 2 targets and 24 yards, what the heck? Like Matt Stafford should be thrown. Like Odell, I swear, has some of like the strangest fans following him because like Baker Mayfield didn't utilize him a whole lot. It wasn't a great locker room fit, whatever. In New York, threw temper tantrums on the sideline, had a massive contract, got hurt all the time. I mean, like the potential is that there were times where I remember Odell after like his first 2-3 years, people were saying he's going to be like one of the best, like he's going to be like a top 10 receiver by the end of his career.
Was there. The talent was there.
People were throwing him in the top 50 receivers all time already, and he had played like 2 seasons. Like they were putting him up with like Antonio Brown. And I'm like,
the talent was there for sure.
The talent was there, and I honestly don't think we've seen Odell exceed, his first 2-3 seasons in the league. We've just seen like Odell. We've seen Beckham Jr. in the back of a jersey, basically. He's been. But
how many guys would have succeeded in New York and Cleveland? Like he wasn't in the best place.
Don't give you. But Cleveland, like compared with Jarvis Landry, you would pick Odell Beckham as the better receiver compared to Jarvis Landry. Yeah, correct. You'd pick Odell Beckham to be your receiver in that offense. For what? Sorry.
There are different types of receivers, but an interesting stat that I've been reading is out of like all of the players to get over like 50 or 100 targets from a quarterback in the past, like the time Baker and Odell have been together, out of 92 players, Baker to Odell, like accurate throws is 90th out of 92. So it is legitimate, like that there was not a connection there. So I think like that, like it just sometimes just not a good fit. So we'll see. I have seen a funny tweet where it's like Odell Beckham's dad getting ready to like put together all the clips of Matt Stafford only targeting Cooper Kupp. Kind of like they were complaining about in Cleveland. But I mean, I think hopefully Odell is humbled by this and he comes in knowing he's just going to be a part, a piece of the offense.
Odell has to come in like Antonio Brown did with Tampa Bay. That's exactly.
And if he does that, he will be the most overqualified,
receiver
guy like that there is. Yeah. So
I want to get that straight to Odell fans. He is not the number 1 receiver. This is Cooper Kupp's offense all day. Mm-hmm. And he's lucky Robert Woods is going to be playing because Robert Woods would easily be number 2. You are literally Antonio Brown to Tampa Bay in your current situation. Like you have the Mike Evans, the Chris Godwin already there. Mm-hmm. Fill your role. Be that guy who could potentially get a 100-yard game when you need him. Yeah. The expectations need to be low tonight for Odell.
And hopefully he is going in with that mindset because that's what he has to do. He's like, I can take this hit because I want to win. He hasn't won a lot. Mm-hmm. So hopefully that's because this team's competing for the Super Bowl.
Right. If he takes the long run with this and like long term, like if he plays this season, knowing his role, fulfilling his role, and like Cooper Kupp is still like, let's face it, Cooper Kupp is going to stay with this team as long as they can keep a hold of him. But if Odell knows his role and he can do it very well, my God, like Matt Stafford's going to have Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham working for him. And it's going to like, you don't need a third receiver. You don't need a literal Antonio Brown at that point. You have those 2 guys. Like that's what Cleveland wanted. Mm-hmm. They wanted that Jarvis Landry Odell connection.
Yeah, for sure.
But like the Rams will win this game to cover. Do they get over 30 points? I'm not entirely confident on it. I think they'll get over 20. They'll probably get at least 24. The Niners won't exceed 20, I don't think.
I agree.
I mean, Aaron Donald's pretty used to terrorizing NFC West opponents, so Jimmy G is not going to be comfortable at all. Jalen Ramsey, he's not going to throw to one side of the field because of Jalen Ramsey, so it's just going to be an awkward game for Jimmy G. Matt Stafford's going to go out there and have a good time, basically.
Yeah, it's an interesting game, but not necessarily because it's
like
not going to be interesting because of the score.
But it's not nothing to like actually.
It's more interesting to see all of these other things that are going to be happening with these teams. So, you know, that I'm looking forward to it, but that is going to do it for us today. We will be back with you on Thursday previewing.
Fingers crossed that
week 11. Yeah, I'm speaking it into existence. Hopefully we'll be back with you back on our regular schedule Mondays and Thursdays to talk about NFL as we head down the stretch and get into those playoffs. Make sure to follow Dash Sports on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok to keep up with everything we've got going on across the NFL and college sports, as well as some other sports. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Dash Sports, to find our shows and clips, and check out our website, dashsports.tv. But until we see you again